Welcome, everyone, to Cosmic Convergence, an experiencer-hosted podcast. Join us today as we dive into the fascinating realms of extraterrestrial intelligence, consciousness, and more. Our guest today is Orion, goes by Psychic Orion. His journey began after his father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, pushing him to seek answers about what was happening as we pass on. Through controlled remote viewing, CRV, and later training at the Oakbridge Institute, Orion came to understand that consciousness continues beyond this life. Today, he's dedicated to helping others navigate grief, find peace, and through understanding of what is beyond. Links to his channel and websites are down below. Thank you again, Orion, for joining us today.
Thanks for the opportunity, guys. It's wonderful. Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for being here.
So Orion, just wanted to kind of start this off. What got you into where you are today? What interested you in the phenomenon? And how did that affect you?
Tragedy brought me the deepest sense of wisdom I ever knew. You had touched on my father coming down with dementia and Alzheimer's. We all experience grief in our lives, and when that gutted me, it forced me to really take a hard, sobering look at what I thought was going to happen when his physical body stopped working. At the time, I was very much a skeptic, and I'd say bordering on atheism in my own personal life because of all of the emotional trauma of dealing with a father who has Alzheimer's. And an interesting little ray of hope found me, which is controlled remote viewing. That was the very first step. It was like a doorway that I could still be a skeptic, but also expand my horizons using an evidence-based approach. And so I'm sure people who follow this channel will know what remote viewing is, but ever so briefly, in case you don't, controlled remote viewing is simply having somebody set a target where an intention is connected to a series of random numbers and letters, so that the person who's doing the remote viewing is blind to whatever the target is, which is it's the penultimate form of evidence-based, intuitive work. When I did my very first target and I got several things right and several things wrong, it occurred to me that statistically, the odds of that occurring, just as random, dumb chance, were astronomically high. I may as well have won the lottery 5 times before I was going to pick what my first target was. And so that made me start thinking about things. And that was the very first sort of ray of hope I had, knowing that, well, I thought that my brain created consciousness. And if what I perceived is true, then perhaps consciousness is non-local. It is not created by the brain. And then from there, it was all over. I mean, I'm on the autism spectrum, so the way that I learn is bottom up. So I started diving into near-death experience stories online, which I think we all have if we're grieving, because it gives us hope. Other forms of remote viewing, all kinds of things. And the more I did this, the more books I read, the more I saw a connection that we do go on after we pass away. And when I saw that, I naturally began to wonder, well, if we go on when we pass away, why? Why? What is the purpose of that? And so that set me off on a path of seeking that is ever expanding. And it just leads to more questions than answers, but I think that fulfills me somehow because I have a never-ending sense of curiosity that I can also apply in an evidence-based way. After remote viewing was then mediumship, studies about reincarnation. And from there, I was convinced. I think the skepticism and atheism from there lessened. I moved more towards an agnostic approach. There is something, but I don't know what. And if I'm being perfectly fair, I may die someday and still never know exactly what's going on. But what I have found in all of my research and all of my joy of seeking is the sense that perhaps this realm that we're in is not meant to make sense. And that's really hard to face when you're somebody who's grieving, when you want answers and when you lose someone and you want that connection again. but within that is everything. When you're fumbling around in the dark through grief, for example, and you're trying to feel your way through things, and you stumble and you fall a lot, you also are forced to learn everything you can about yourself in that dark room, that dark space. This realm, this planet, is a lot like that. It has some light, but not much, other than maybe what you generate and share with others, perhaps. And while there are those who choose to steal light from others, let's say, and use it for their own selfish ends, there are those that choose to just give it away freely. And I think in everyone's path of seeking comes that choice. If they want to go down the path of take, but never feeling satiated, or give, to which there's a sort of peace that perfectly satisfies and fulfills, and at the same time never leaves you craving more. It's just peace. Um, so that's where I'm at. I'm chasing peace. I want as much of that as I can possibly have, you know. And the work that I do, I'm trying to share an evidence-based approach so that others can find that peace. There's nothing wrong with being a skeptic. I say there's a difference between being a skeptic and a jerk, but really a skeptic is someone who is seeking the truth. And if I can provide the bricks on that path that are evidence-based for someone to make that bridge from one identity to another, it's great, because I don't know how in the world people who are atheists, for example, live knowing that someone that they love passes away and then they think it's just darkness. I mean, that's I don't know. I want to provide people a chance to see beyond that, because I think everyone deserves to know that where we go is it's actually quite beautiful. So yeah, I'll pause for a second.
Well, yeah, Ryan, thank you for that. And, being able to move through grief, especially with family members, is so personal and so hard. And we often find ourselves lost in it. And so I just want to applaud you for being able to process through that. And I know it challenges everything that you knew previously when you go through that. And, we're recording this, February 07. So this is after a lot of the drops with the Epstein files, and we're not going to get into any of those details today on this episode, but I just wanted to highlight that there's a lot of darkness that people are processing right now, and a lot of unsurety. And yeah, I just want to say with those type of people, I would say a majority of all of us are going through some form of trauma. That really right now is the best time for us to dig deep in ourselves, to dig deep in our own experiences, and that it's important to help with grounding as we process, whatever is whatever is facing us down, whether it's personal or if it's world events. So yeah, I just want to applaud you for engaging with people in that way, of trying to find that within themselves. And also, that can be extremely challenging to people to face those internal mechanisms that they assume are true, like being atheist, right? And then you have strange encounters and you have experiences with the other side or the phenomenon in general. And it does break your paradigm a bit. And so people react very viscerally to things that challenge their internal worldview, because it's a part of their pillar and they're part of their safety net. So, yeah, we have to remember that when people are coming online and are very defensive about things, that there's probably a process going on internally for them that they need to take time to go through. I've had the similar thing where I've encountered people online I got into debates with, and then months later they're like, actually, thanks for wanting to continue to talk with me, because that actually really changed a lot, and so yeah, I just wanted to say that's amazing that you're able to do that. And yeah, a lot of people are lost right now. A lot of people don't know what's up or down. And yeah, but how have you Where specifically did you find the most peace when you were going across that Rubicon of being atheist, and then to where you're more so, you're not being agnostic, you're not like fully sure of what the prime truth, if prime truth is, if there is any prime truth, but how is that process for you in feeling like you had some semblance
That's a
of
great
direction?
question. And here's the joke of all of this. My peace has not come from any of my intellectual pursuits or researching or the path that I've followed with regard to answers that I've received. My peace has actually come through through the body and through the stillness that one requires in order to do intuitive work. So the joke is everything that our minds are wrapped up in, and all of the trauma and all of the identity and all of this and that, it's just a distraction. This world provides so many things and so much distraction, but the ultimate joke that I found, the ultimate treasure that I found, is the peace that comes from within when you don't go in the direction of the external and instead go internal. That has been the greatest gift of all. And I will say, I don't think that I would have found this without my father being the catalyst and having gone through such a traumatic event. And while it sucks, and it still sucks, and it's hard, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone, there's another part of me that knows that I wouldn't be who I am if all of that hadn't occurred. It wouldn't have pushed me towards wanting to share this either. I think I would have just been like a dragon sitting on a bunch of wisdom and just hoarding it all to myself. But instead, every day, I seek fulfillment by sharing what I know. So just to answer your question, the greatest thing that I found that satiates and fulfills fully has just been peace, has been doing meditation, body scans, putting my hand on my heart and just noticing what the top of my hand feels like, where the air meets it, and just being in that moment. Because what you do there is you delete the mind and you're experiencing purely. And
so you're able to be present, is what you're articulating. Being present with yourself has helped you find peace. It's
the only peace I'll ever want. Yeah. And, to touch on that, I very much feel that going way, way, way back, when we were just beings living out in the grasslands and holing up in caves and trying to survive, I don't necessarily think that human beings were meant to evolve to the point that we have. Perhaps we were, but at least the greed and the chasing of money, which requires you to have to step on other people throughout that process, I don't think was supposed to happen. I think that at some point we were supposed to look within. So I'm thinking of things like the very first religions or spiritualities of the world, Shintoism and shamanism specifically. I think that people were meant to be bored and were meant to go within to find something else to do. I'm hungry today. I can't find food. I'm going to trust that I can find it tomorrow. Maybe I can use my intuition to locate where that food will be. So there's going the wrong way and then there's going the correct way. And I think that just to very ever so lightly touch on what you mentioned, I think that we are possibly on the precipice of a big reset occurring. I don't know for sure. Who knows? That's not an evidence-based approach, but I think the right way is always within. And what's interesting is that path will always, you won't get miracles in your life. You're not going to win the lottery by developing intuition. You're not going to have a sudden thing that changes everything other than how it changes you. And so through this, I found the greatest treasures have been peace. And then maybe second to that is perspective and the ability to be fluid with that. All that we really are just points of perception, just perceiving raw data. That's all that we do all the time, 24/7. Even when we're asleep, we're doing it while we're dreaming. Um, I think that's what we do. That's our job, is just these raw points of perception. And what you do with that, all that life is, it really comes down to two things: perception and action, or the lack thereof. And that forms a life and a person and a world.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, I think if we could move towards something with intuition, what I find interesting, so what I've seen with remote viewing and mediumship is that there is something on the other side. What it is, I don't know, but how it feels, I feel in that perfect peace and stillness. And what's interesting is that I'll call it the divine, even though I don't know what it is. It leaves sort of a breadcrumb trail. And to those who are seeking, when you find these little breadcrumbs, it transforms who you are. Um,
Mhm.
it also changes you in the sense that you kind of become more like whatever that divine thing is. You want to share it. You want to love more. You want to connect. You want to give of yourself and provide resources because you start to see yourself in everything else. It's an amazing expansion that is so organic and simple. And I think in relating that to the phenomenon, you see that happen a lot with, my gosh, it just off the top of my head, one of the most evidential cases I ever remember reading about was, and you guys might know better than me. I believe it was in South Africa where all of the school children were visited by NHI. And the main message,
Mhm.
Yeah,
go ahead, what was
Zimbabwe.
that, Christian?
Oh no, sorry, that was a
Oh,
case
thank
in
you.
Zimbabwe and
It's the
yeah,
That's
burial
right.
school.
yeah. John Edward Mack actually went to
Yep.
interview the children.
And the main
Yeah,
message when you look back on that was that the children were getting these flash visuals, again, much like intuition, um, where they were seeing our environment being destroyed and that needed to change. I don't think that anything that had ill intention towards us would bother coming down and saying, "Hey, you guys are doing it wrong. You kind of need to clean up your act." And you know, uh, I think that that's a sign more of benevolence and of care. And I think that that's also a sign that whatever that particular NHI was that landed that day or bridged into our reality went the right way in seeking itself. It went within and wanted to share that knowledge with others. And why did it share it with children? Because children aren't lost yet by going external to themselves. I know that it's a medical fact that children up until I think the age of 5 or 7 live mostly in theta brainwave state, which is close to dreaming. They're imaginative, they're curious, they're full of wonder, and they happily give and share of themselves. They might fight over a toy, but they all kind of click on the playground. I don't know. I think we could all kind of learn from being a bit more childlike and going within more. So I think that the phenomenon, yes, there's positive and there's negative, but again, what doesn't have positive or negative? When I think about humanity, it's very much a gray area. No pun intended, but um, the grays that are visiting us, perhaps there's a gray area there too. And I'll be honest, I think everyone who watches this, who is seeking, I know for a fact that the people that watch your channel are seeking knowledge because they want to wrap their head around the phenomenon and come to a sense of closure, perhaps, which I don't think will ever happen. And I think that's also the point, again, like I was saying about how this is a realm of uncertainty, and that's the point because you discover who you are and then it launches you on your trajectory outward. Um, I don't think we'll ever know, and I think that that may be a good thing. And what happens is instead of seeking more and more answers, again, like me, for me at least, I just seek peace instead of knowledge. Knowledge is good, but if it leads to more peace, I'm there. Um, and I have done intuitive readings on the concept of what the earthly reincarnation cycle is, and why humanity's here and why we keep coming back. And I do not see anything nefarious. When I've done that, and it was done blindly, by the way, as you do with remote viewing, that session produced two results. One, it showed me similar to the Devil Tarot card, where there are people with chains around their neck and they've got a ball and chain and they're stuck there, right? Um, And the knowing that came with that was that these people, just like in the tarot card, can choose to take that off any time and set it down and be free, but they don't. And so they keep coming back, chasing their vices and chasing things that will never actually satiate or fulfill. And the other part of that reading was this golden step pyramid, which symbolized a sort of process of going higher up and focusing to a point to where you no longer need this realm and you move beyond it. I wonder if in the phenomenon there are beings in the phenomenon that chase one side and some that chase the other. And so the interactions that we have depend upon their intention and our intention. But again, I'm not an experiencer, so I almost don't even want to step towards that because I feel like I don't have the right to say much about that. It's not something I've ever known. It's all theoretical for me, you know?
I mean, we're all technically experiencers of the phenomenon and the other side in some way or fashion. So we'll just add that. Like, it's not like we have any extra form of insight or anything. It's just that we've had more experiences with the strange and often confusing. So, you know, do we have a better answer than anyone else? I don't know about that, but we're trying to figure out at least some answers to that question. And yeah, I often have felt like there's stuff that I'm not even going to understand, and there's a point to that. There's a reason, and I sense that intuitively that there's elements of things being revealed at certain times for certain reasons, and others that are not going to be helpful. So I'm not going to understand. That's totally fine. So, but there's other parts that I can feel being pulled in a certain direction. So it's always an interesting thing to pick up. But yeah, Christian, John, do you guys have any questions or
Yeah. So, well, it's more of a statement that I guess will eventually lead to a question. But just to jump off of what you were talking about in terms of, I honestly agree, and I think that we are on the precipice of a change. And how soon that will happen or what it's going to be, I have no idea. But like we've often had discussions about this tangible feeling in the air that some kind of shift is occurring. I mean, we have channels like this and channels like Gaia and all these other things popping up everywhere. And more people are curious. More people believe that this stuff is real. There are talks in the government now about interdimensional beings, which technically, in a way, we are interdimensional beings ourselves, especially if consciousness continues after death and our awareness never dies, then technically we're an interdimensional being. And there seems to be other beings with more knowledge of this and are aware of that fact already without having, not like humans where we're kind of unsure, we can't say anything factual about whether life continues after death. But these beings seem to have that awareness. And through my studies of near-death experiences and mediumship and things like that, I often wondered and try to put into people's minds is like, if you're dealing with a species or beings with an awareness of what happens after death and that life continues, and the life review is actually a thing. And for those who are not familiar, the life review, many near-death experiences report where after death, your life flashes before your eyes, but it's more than all the events of from your birth to your death. You're also experiencing all the feelings, positive and negatively, that you've put onto others. When you hit that person, you actually become that person and you feel the punch. Now, if there's a species of beings out there that understand this already, why would they do anything to hurt any other being, knowing full well that they're really hurting themselves? So it brings that, and that's not to say that there aren't negative beings either. But also in my research in hypnotherapy, there's a hypnotherapist, Robert Schwartz, who actually worked with mediums in his hypnotherapy work to try to pull more information about why do we come here and what's the reasoning for choosing particular lives. Because I don't know if this has come up in your work, but one of the things that kept coming up in Robert Schwartz's work is that he would ask the question, to a person's higher self when he puts them in the hypnotherapy session. Like, why did you choose this? Why did you contract AIDS? Or why were you traumatized by your parent? Or why, like, and spirit guides come through and the person's higher self come through explaining the challenges that particular soul has and why they wanted to choose a particular challenge so that they can overcome, the ultimate goal being to be more loving. It's always about becoming more loving. It's a higher frequency, vibration. You hear those like buzzwords nowadays, but that's basically what they were saying. It comes down to becoming a being with more awareness. And the more awareness you have, the more opportunity for love or other choices that you can make. So have you come across in your work like anything where maybe a spirit comes through? And I know you mentioned some of that, like that peace that they can help you feel. Did they give any indication of what the other side is like for those that don't know, or anything that I've mentioned
Absolutely.
so far?
Very much so. And I'll share a couple of very interesting experiences. Um, so I'd say the most predominant theme is spirits that come through 9 times out of 10 seem to collaborate with a message that props a person up, where they can also then prop up other people, almost like a one big community. I have never received a negative message that brought fear or doubt or uncertainty. And I think the point there is that on the other side, beings naturally collaborate. I would suggest that the other side, that what reality really is, or at least our little pocket of it, where our tapestries that we're weaving with our lives, is spiritual in nature. It is sacred. It is love based, at least in this little sector of whatever this reality is. Um, I have very much encountered evidentially as well. Just last week, I was doing work, and someone's father came through, and he was walking me through what I thought was like a, um, a grove of olive trees. And he's walking me through. He took my hand in my mind's eye, and we're walking forward. And then the next thing I see, he's holding up dirt to my face. And I'm like, okay, there's dirt being held up to my face. And then he drops the dirt and lets it go. And then finally, he fed me something red in color that tasted sweet. And I told her this, and she said, oh my God, yeah, my dad always used to say that when he died, he was going to go back. Oh, and I'm sorry, I should preface saying, I mentioned that this was in Spain. I don't know how I knew that, but it was in Spain. And she goes, my dad always used to say when he died, he's going to go back to his dirt because the family owned land. And it wasn't a grove of olive trees, it was a vineyard. And he was feeding me grapes by hand, like to say thank you. You know, beings on the other side, I've encountered entire landscapes that they build. Uh, I would say that if this were a Venn diagram, where this crosses is with people who do out of body experiences or astral projection, that can actually experience thought forms, astral temples, things of that nature. On the other side, it feels more like, so when people ask how is it possible that all of this can exist, the closest rationale I can say is, well, you know how an author can write any book that they want with any story, and you can put infinity inside of a book and then close the cover and set it on the shelf somewhere in a finite space. That's what reality on that side feels like. Because everything I encounter, people build rose gardens, people build log cabins in the woods. I've experienced one man built a lake where the sun was shining in such a way that it was always this beautiful diamond like reflection off the water. Uh, it's as if the other side is like almost pure imagination. And we come here to forget about that from time to time.
Mm.
And where this ties in with my own experience doing remote viewing blindly, I find that we as souls are very much like artists, and we are constantly honing our craft by changing the way that we perceive different kinds of reality. And why we do that is because then we're able to come in with completely different tools and a different mindset to make brand new art. ultimately, to me, it feels like an uncovering of, it's like a gift. It's like if there is a divine, it's the divine saying, look, I've given you everything. And if you develop the eyes to see, you can have it all. But you need to do the work, which is why I'm not going to provide miracles, or that it rarely will. You have to seek who you want to be able to see the next thing. And
Yeah,
yeah,
that makes sense. And my understanding of it, especially how you described how it seems to be like pure imagination. That's what Robert Schwartz's conclusions have come to. He says that basically it's a conscious-based reality where you're not restricted by the limitations of the body here. That technically being here is more like being dead because you're so cut off from the source of who you really are, and that dying is like waking up from a dream. So kind of like when we wake up from a dream here and we're like, oh, this is who I really am. That was just a dream I was having. That death is similar in that state where you wake up and you're like, how could I forget who I was really, all of that was just a dream. That's not really who I am. This is who I am. How could I forget? And you'll often hear sometimes spirits or even there's, a guy who had an NDE, and the beings he met were laughing at him. And they're like, dude, he doesn't remember us. He completely forgot. Like, and he's like confused. He's like, what's going on? And they're like, you don't remember us, man? Like, they're like, yeah, that was just the temporary thing you were doing. And he was just shocked. And but Robert Schwartz's work was basically describing what you were saying, that, you think cabin in the woods, and because it's pure consciousness, now you're in a cabin in the woods. There's no time delay. Whereas here in these slower, if we're thinking scientifically, lower frequency based reality, you have to get up. You have to get on the horse to get, you got to walk to work or take the car to work or the bus. It's dependent on the action, like, or lack thereof, like you were describing. So I think that's what it is. It's more of and because it's a higher frequency, everything's moving much faster. There's no what we would conceive of as time there, because you hear that often, that there was no time or everything was happening all at once. Like, I'm describing this to you in a sequence of events, but when I was over there, I was able to talk to 20 different beings simultaneously. And I think evidentially that this is helps to prove that. Like when me and John were using dowsing rods to communicate with a being, they were answering our rods regardless of the distance, even though we're not next to each other, and we're in completely separate states. And they've shown me this time and time again, and that even thoughts can be read, because I would ask questions mentally only, and they would answer the questions regardless of whether I did it physically with my voice or in my mind, So it's
what's really going to twist your brain later on. And John, I'll pause in a second to see what you want to. Okay, but what's really going to twist your brain later on is to consider, what is it that's looking out of our eyes, and why are there so many occasions with abduction phenomenon where the people are treated by the beings as if they are one of them. What I'm hinting at here is perhaps Earth is a simulated space or a dreamt up space where beings of different cultural, genetic, well, not genetic because you have no body there, but like spiritually genetic, different backgrounds can come to experience what life would be like as a human, to then come back to their tribe and say, "Oh, this is what it was like." Carl Crusher recently inspired the hell out of me with a thought that he posted about maybe they're coming here because they're so very different from us. They're seeking friendship. They're seeking something that is different than what they know. And he was talking about a hive mind mentality, and to put yourself in their shoes for a moment and imagine having no privacy of your thoughts, where, yeah, you have absolute telepathic connection with everything else, kind of like mycelium. You know everything else with the rest of the hive. Wouldn't you want to know what sovereignty, individuality, and privacy is like? So you might create a realm like Earth where you, as Aldous Huxley says, the brain is acting as a reducing valve on consciousness intentionally, so that you would know what is it like to be this version of a conscious being. Again, coming back to the notion of being an artist. Go ahead.
What's love without, fear or lack of love? Like, how do you know what love really feels like without being hurt. You know what I mean? Like without having your heart broken. That, and that's how Robert Schwartz described it. That this is a realm where hearts
Wow.
break open, and we can put these challenges in front of ourselves, so that we can better define from a different perspective. Like and when we talk about previous lifetimes, you know, I had a particular perspective in that lifetime, and now I grow this perspective, and I keep growing that perspective. And but yeah, sorry, John. I know you wanted
Oh,
to.
no, you're fine. It's a good conversation, and I think the main point is that we're here and we're not going to know all the answers. So a lot of things come intuitively, and there is I don't know if realm is the right term. I mean, the terminology all depends on who the individual is, I suppose. But whether it be ether, whether it be dimension, whether it be, and so I don't know if any of that is really important, to be quite honest with you. I think that, Orion, you had said that before we recorded too, that, is finding the peace within, right? As an individual sovereign being, we try to find that peace that is within. And then I would hope that being within will also come out. We don't want to be like this candle, and I've said this adage many times, Daniel knows this, where you be this candle and you're like the love and light community, where it's just like love and light, love and light. You have to be love and light. And they just sit in the corner and they hold this candle and say, see how bright I am? Don't you want to be like me? And I've come across people like that, especially earlier before we had Cosmic Convergence. We were involved in another community. And I had a negative experience. And I was told that I was not vibrating high enough. And this is a personal thought, and I don't know how you feel about this. I'd like to have your thoughts. In full honesty, as I know you will. The whole low vibration, high vibration ideology, I guess we should say, is kind of intuitively false. And I don't say that to be antagonistic. I have my own proof, and that is of Om. Om is a very low Om. It's not ee, right? Okay, it's not, it's very calming. It's a low vibration, helps the meditative state. It's been shown in large groups of people to have positive effects because of joining as one organism, that hive that you've described before, to bring about positive change, positive thought. When I think of high vibration frequencies, I think chaos. Okay, I think of molecules bouncing here, there, and everywhere, hadron collider kind of stuff, where everything's always impacting everything else. And there's destruction. Now, I'm not saying there isn't creation after destruction. Energy can neither be destroyed nor created. Understand that. But I think that there's a lot of focus on this high vibrational thing and this peer pressure for people to always vibrate higher so they can meet these high vibrational entities, so they can be enlightened. Meanwhile, you have monks, and no human's perfect. In our current form, none of our souls in our bodies and our experiences that we have are perfect. I don't believe that, at least. Okay, so we still have a lot to learn, but some of the most peaceful, most enlightened groups are monks and others that own very low frequency. And so my question that I pose to that, and I know that's a lot, and I apologize, is when you're doing your remote viewing, when you're doing your meditation, what frequency range do you find yourself most comfortable in?
The range of peace, of stillness, as still as possible, So I suppose one could argue that that is the
Okay.
lowest vibration, right? Where, like comparing a boulder to, as you say, the particles that get smashed in a collider, perhaps it's completely backwards. Perhaps low vibration is closer to the state of perfection, whereas high vibration is things shattering, breaking, trying new things, transforming, breaking again, and so on, more towards entropy. Clearly, there's a spectrum here. What's right or wrong will depend on the perception of the individual perceiving. So, from a psychopath's point of view, they would prefer to be in the low vibration state of, being evil and wanting to harm because it satiates and it fulfills, right? So to them, that's heaven for them. That brings them a sense of they love their work. Serial killers love their work. They keep trophies of their work because it fulfills them to remember that. That's dark, but it is a form of love, right? Um, on the other side of things, you have people who are trying to help others, which is often associated with like the love and light community. I do not think that either spectrum. Uh, I do not think that anyone has the right to judge what is correct or incorrect on that spectrum because whatever created all of this seems to have put freedom as the highest form of love, if it is in fact love on the other side. So, no, I don't think that there's any right or wrong. And I actually more agree with your perception that a lower vibration, you see this in society too, where people associate darkness or the color black with evil, when in fact, when you're in a womb or you're looking at the sky at night, that darkness is the potentiality of all things, right? Um, it would be a low vibration, right? So, no, I very much like your thought. I think that because people want to classify and have an identity and then run with a tribe, we get stuck with these tropes that keep echoing throughout time. But perhaps it's time that we re-examine that because um, when I'm at my highest vibe of entropy, I'm enraged. I might be protecting my daughter. I might be stopping someone from hitting a dog, right? Where it's like I'm not thinking clearly. I am scattered and my energy is everywhere and I'm solely focused on the fulfillment of just one thing, even if it breaks me, even if it kills me. Whereas on the other end of things, when you're very centered and very still, which seems to be where I'll say most of intuition comes in. It's not found on both ends of the spectrum, John. And I'd like your thoughts on that too. I find that it's mostly found on the spectrum of stillness, of the lower vibration, because I think that that's closer to what awaits us on the other side. And so when you embody that state, you're also embodying the things that you can do there, which may also explain why so many people who have near death experiences or astral project enough suddenly gain intuitive ability. So I'm going to pause and see what you have to say, what your thoughts are.
Well, I think I don't recall having any out of body experiences, even though when I was younger, instead of and people could take this how they will. That's fine. It's still something I question to this day. I really don't have it that much more often, but I would feel like I was falling rather than rising. And I don't know if that's just due to being overly tired as a kid, being so active, or what. I mean, that's possible. I mean, there are some things that can be explained just on a mundane level. But I think that really what it comes down to is experience. I think that as human beings, at least in this carnation, inhabiting this human body, I should say, that we are here to experience, and that experience includes peace and anger. We can't have one without the other, lest we cease to exist. There cannot be a light without a dark. There you could have the brightest light possible, but it's still going to be just a little dim. You could have the darkest night possible, but you're still going to see that little star. Not all stars are planets, but not planets are all stars, right? And so you're going to have that. There has to be a balance. There's a duality within the universe. There is a duality within ourselves. Now, I'm not saying, hey, if you're angry, go kill somebody. If you're angry, go beat them up, or take your anger out on someone else that doesn't deserve it. Although, to some, there are extremes. Yes, murder is extreme. But if we're upset and someone says something that we don't like, we lash at them, right? And is that the right thing to do? Probably not societal standards. But at the same time, it's not exactly wrong because it's our human experience. We should learn from that and learn to be better. I mean, it's constant learning, right? So what I'm trying to say is while we can find that inner peace, it's very difficult to hold on to all the time. And that is because we are supposed to experience what we're supposed to experience. Now, I don't mean to ramble and go off on a tangent here. The whole higher self thing that Chris has mentioned before, and the choosing to come down to Earth per se, or other dimensions or other planets, realities, because this isn't going to be the only one, right? Earth, and say, I want to have a disability, or I'm going to get with this other higher self, because I've heard this, I know Chris didn't mention this, to where it's like, you're going to be the one that harms me. And the other soul says, yeah, the other higher self says, yes, that way you can learn that thing you want to learn. Okay, let's go to Earth, right? And then the souls are in Earth, and then there's like this prearranged agreement. I still have a very difficult time with that, as being like, okay, well, yes, you're going to be, and this is not my personal example, but an example, you're going to be my father, but you're going to beat me every day. And my soul's going to be in this body. It's going to live as long as it is. But 3/4 of that, my life, I'm going to hate you for it because I need to learn that lesson. I have a really difficult time with that. I think that infringes upon free will, very much so. And I don't know, I can't think for my higher self, because if my higher self was always in contact with me, or is it, right, that I would be in constant disagreement with it. Like, but I don't want to do that mean thing. I don't want to hurt someone. Oh, well, you guys agreed on that. Well, baloney, hogwash. I would never do such a thing, right? So I know I'm all over the place with these thoughts, Orion, but I think that there's a lot of spaces. I'm not saying you're trying to fill them. I mean, humanity is trying to try to explain these things of, higher self, soul coming into the human body for the experience, the other realm, the afterlife and stuff. And I think with our cognitive abilities that we have, which is a lot, is locked almost intentionally, almost not even of our own knowledge. Okay. Some agreement. I don't know. Some interference from something else. I don't know. Okay. All that's hypothetical, that we would, I'm sorry. I'm kind of losing it here and I'm rambling. If there's a lot of spaces that I think that we try to fill because we're still trying to think of things in our human perspective. And the problem that we have with, like, again, some of the community is if it sounds good, it's almost like, okay, yeah, that helps me spiritually bypass what might or might not be there. I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable. I'm in my bed with my pillow and I'm nice and comfy and warm. And that might not always be the case. People are looking for quick answers, unfortunately, because they can't find that peace within themselves, right? They want that quick answer so they can move on to the next question. And I don't really think what that experience of life is supposed to be about.
I have so much to say when you're ready. Go ahead, Daniel.
I just wanted to give a definition for what spiritual bypassing is for anyone who's listening doesn't understand. Spiritual bypassing is a tendency to use spiritual ideas, practices, or beliefs to avoid confronting unresolved emotional issues, psychotic wounds, or unfinished developmental tasks. Coined by psychologist and Buddhist teacher John Wellward in the 1980s, it describes a defense mechanism that individuals bypass difficult emotions like grief, anger, and trauma and turn to spiritual concepts such as, quote, everything happens for a reason, quote, stay positive, or, quote, all is one, rather than processing them authentically. And the antidote lies in I can't talk. The antidote lies in authentic and emotional honesty, acknowledging pain, embracing the full spectrum of human experience, allowing emotions to be felt and processed rather than dismissed. So yeah, it's a huge issue in the New Age community that a lot of people talk about. And I just want to, I'm just going to close that and then you can say something to Ryan.
It's a big can of worms.
It's a big can of worms. And I believe it often happens with people that have not done the work enough internally for themselves. And like you said, John, it's a quick cover up to a question that has really been scratching at us since the dawn of mankind. And it's really prevalent in the psychonaut community of people who do psychedelics, a lot of things like that, where they're trying to get a quick experience. Why? Rich people going to do ayahuasca, does it change them as a narcissist? No, it doesn't. It just makes it worse. So what's the reasoning behind that? Well, these people are doing a quick in and out. They're not doing internal work for themselves. They're not taking it in and really chewing on that internally, deep down, where they're able to then see the broad picture, but not understand the importance of everything in its minute details. Sorry.
No, I love it. This is awesome. So John, my ever famous question that I still don't have an answer to is, why does a dog have to die slowly and in the dark? Because it happened to get a paint can stuck on its head, right? Questions like that have to be part of your spiritual practice. And I don't have an answer, but what I can tell you is that what I've experienced when I'm doing mediumship is everything that I've mentioned. I have never seen a place that is full of pain and horror. Now, how is it possible that there's this dichotomy between, if it's all love on the other side and peace, how is it possible that of that you can have a realm like ours that has such a high, level of duality and pain? The only conclusion that I've ever come to with that is that when you buy a house and you put an offer down to buy that house, you often have to deposit earnest money to have some skin in the game. So I suppose the question to answer that question is, how much would it change you if you knew that this place was not real and if the stakes were low? Another layer of that is to consider, perhaps we come here because we are all world builders. We see a microcosm of this occur in our reality with people who put on plays, create video games or movies, or even do podcasts and shows, right? We create miniature realities with these thoughts and concepts. So perhaps people like you and me came here to experience this realm of smoke and roses, to figure out, well, how can we still help people transcend and evolve in a realm or a world that we build on that side that doesn't involve this much pain? Because I personally, if I were designing a place, it wouldn't have this much pain. A child wouldn't have the ability to die of leukemia at the age of 2, for example. Why do horrible things have to happen? And if God is truly loving and truly wise, why would there be this flaw? And of course, so that opens the door to the early versions of Gnosticism that view that all material reality is inherently evil and wrong and flawed. So John, I don't have an answer for you, but I can tell you that what I've experienced has been predominantly positive. And I'll say this too, when you're looking at both ends of the spectrum, there's only one end that allows you to, in my opinion, leave this dualistic reality and change what you are by gaining the ability to have intuition, loving others more, um, telepathy, psychic ability, things of that nature. Whereas if on the other end of the spectrum, if you stay the person who's rageful and wants to hurt people all day, you might become a billionaire and you might have a lot of control and power, but I think you'll die feeling unfulfilled and constantly on that hedonic treadmill of wanting more. Those are my thoughts about it.
Well, thank you, Orion. I'm going to say this one last thing because I don't want to completely take over the conversation. I'll let my other gentlemen chime in on stuff. So, the love, and that's important because love is the answer. It's just how it's used. First off, the term love, I mean, and no, not disparaging the audience, but every one of us watching, every one of us in part of this interview, have our own definition of love. And it's probably not just varies all over the place, but even when we think about the purest intention of love, like I've been hugged by an entity, okay? And that was more love than I've ever felt in my almost 54 years of life, to where it was indescribable, that it was not human. And that wasn't because I was thinking, at the time, I'm being hugged by an NHI or whatever have you. No, it was like my body was incapable on a cellular level to absorb as much as it did. So, but love is tricky because people use love as a weapon, and I'll give an example of this in a minute. And then people use it as selflessness, right? The service to self and service to others, okay? Through the love spectrum, okay? There's still love on the service to self. It is a love of the self that is so overpowering that no one else and nothing else matters. But it is a form of love, as much as hate is a form of love, right? And then you have the service to others. I'm not talking martyrdom. One can still love the self, right? But not at the expense of others. So love is the answer, but you have this duality that is looking at love through two completely different lenses. So in your experience, Orion, and the way that you're able to calm thyself and look within and help other people, you're more on this spectrum. But out there, as we well know in the news and everything else, and beyond stuff we don't even know, that there's love on this side, or their bastardized, excuse my French, version of love. To them, it's love. It's love, all right. But it's just so opposite. So everything is love, but it's just the definitions are so skewed that it's like not even these opposites most of the time attract, or do they? And that's why we're stuck in this endless cycle. Like, I know what you mean when you say the world is the way that it is. And I look at it this way. I know what you mean, right? I know what you mean. The human world, civilization, and stuff like that. But it just astounds me every day, and I'll end with this. It astounds me every day, and I've fallen victim to it as well, to where the world, the earth, the universe for that matter, but the earth is so beautiful. But no one ever pays attention to the beauty and the majesty that it is. It is just as much a part of us as we are of it, of her, right? And to respect her is to respect ourselves. To love ourselves is to love her. And we're dependent upon each other, right? But the human race as a whole, not, 59 or 51%, 49%, as a whole, cannot stop for 1 second to see that boulder in peace in the Om or to see the river raging and find the beauty in that chaos, because we're too wrapped up in the self to recognize the beauty that is without of the self. In microcosm, out macrocosm.
I think that our struggle is the same that whatever created us has. Perhaps it divided itself into a nearly infinite, you know, an infinite, like an asymptote, like just approaching infinity number of vessels of perception to try and source this out and say, well, what do we want more? Do we want to experience this kind of love or that kind of love? And perhaps ultimately, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie War Games. John, you got to have seen the movie War Games. Um, anyway, in the game, he pits the computer against itself to end the nuclear war that was about to happen. Yeah. And what the computer finds is that there were no potential winners. It was a zero-sum game. There was no point. So to answer your question, it's well beyond the realm of what my small human brain could ever possibly know. But I do know that it exists, and I know that in the astral realms, the things that exist there are concepts that exist as if they have their own consciousness. You know, like you can have a concept of damn near anything. So I wonder if all of this complete freedom that everything has to express itself as it wants is something seeking itself. You know, and I'm reminded of like a newborn. Before you tell a newborn what it is, it's just this point of perception looking out at the world, perceiving, but it doesn't know what it is. And so when you twist the cube and you somehow find a way to make something that's slightly different to look at itself and tell the other self, the newborn, you will look like this, you are this, you are that. And then the newborn is communicating to the other thing saying, you look like this, you look like that. Now you have the potential for a story. You have the potential for comparison, duality, identity. I almost feel like, of course, there's so much more to this than just an infinite peace, but I feel like there's also like an infinite curiosity, which again is why I said earlier, it seems like it puts freedom as the highest expression of love, because you can do whatever you want. And again, I may never know, which is again, I think kind of the point. I, as one point of perception, it's like a form of spiritual voting, get to decide what my trajectory will be. So yeah, in the end, I don't know. I wish I could just have it definitive, but there's no way to. Yeah.
None of us do.
That's the answer right there. Is we don't know. The more you learn, the less you know, and that is always how it is in this reality, at least. So we're coming up on the hour mark, Ryan, and I just wanted to kind of ask, so kind of we're all coming together in all of our different thought forms of trying to define just what reality is, just normal everyday Saturday conversations, but fairly basic. I think we can figure out the answer though in the next hour, but I'm just kidding. But just
go
wanted
Bears.
to say, right. But I wanted to just interject a few thoughts before I kind of wanted to ask you what you want to leave with our audience today. But when I was in religion for most of my life, it was evangelical. To view everything as black and white, to view things as anything that is godly through Jesus is positive and light, and everything else is darkness, that did not do anything for me internally to help me through my own vices, through my own sin that I viewed as that I was a horrible human being, all those things that religion brings in those frameworks. And so when I started moving out of that, I started realizing that I needed to accept parts of myself, these dark parts of myself that I didn't know what to do with. And then I realized that there was hurt and anger and frustration, and those parts of myself that didn't feel like they were seen I didn't even understand them, and so that would come up subconsciously to make myself hate myself more, right, and all those things. So whenever I think about the whole contrast part, I think back to my religious upbringing, and when I came into more of a balanced perspective, that's where I was able to start moving through some of my deep seated issues, my self hatred. I still deal with them, but they started to me down the path where I could start tackling that. And it's really important that people continue to go on their spiritual journey, even they get into encountering the phenomenon or new age or religious backgrounds, whatever, or an agnostic, or even we have, I'm sure, viewers that are atheists, that are witches or whatever. There's a lot of atheists that practice various religions. So I just want to be honorable about everyone's perspective. Always try to keep working towards a balance, because I think that's really where we find this clearest definition of what we're dealing with in the external and the internal. And but yeah, I would just say, Ryan, if there was one thing you want to leave with people, especially, I know the conversations we've had of the latest information come out, or just seeing the darker aspects of humanity, what would you like to leave with people today?
Get stuck on the positive aspects of what all of this might be, whether it be the divine or the phenomenon. And I understand why people do that, because we are inherently human beings who need comfort, who need care. I mean, we're born, and if there's not somebody else there to take care of us, we would just die. With that said, I do feel that whatever it is that is out there, that the great all of whatever, the question to the answer of 42, whatever that is multifaceted. And no, John, it is not just love and light, but it is also not pure malevolence. It is an infinite spectrum of everything. And to pigeonhole it is almost an insult to it, because that's like saying to an artist who can do every kind of art, why aren't you focusing on pointillism or cubism or something? That artist would say, are you kidding me? I do it all. I do all of it. I think intuitively, to answer your question and leave a final message, I think that we're living out an echo, a microcosm of a macrocosm. I think that we're living out an echo of a story of a God that doesn't know itself, of a something that doesn't know itself, and it's seeking to. The only things that it knows empirically are what it feels. Imagine for a moment you just suddenly come online, whatever that is to you, and maybe you're surrounded in a void of darkness. You can't see anything, but you have a feeling. You know that you're aware, whatever that is. You know that you're perceiving, and that's it. And imagine living like that for maybe close to an eternity, until you finally realize that you can do something about it. Maybe you divide yourself into another part and say, oh, there's a blob of me right there. You don't know why you're here, what made you, but you simply are. What would you do with that? You certainly wouldn't want to box yourself in. I don't think I would. Now, would I invent the concept of there being the possibility of a dog slowly dying in the dark with a paint can stuck in its head? If I did, it would be because my yearning to know myself is greater than the amount of suffering that creates. So what we have here is something that yearns so deeply, possibly to know itself, that it harms itself, it loves itself, it's constantly questioning itself to know. Will it ever know? I'm not sure. But I'm wondering if somewhere along the way, it is learning that the point isn't to know, it's simply to be. And that's why we feel things like profound peace when we are also just being, instead of in the mind thinking. For me, at least, that's the breadcrumb that I'll leave with you and your viewers, is that piece that while I'm here in the dark, like all of you and everyone seeing this, feeling around in my life, trying to avoid suffering or trying to love others or whatever it is, the peace is the homing signal that I inherently feel to go towards. And while truth is inherent to each individual and is not empirical, for me it happens to be peace and wanting to spread that. I don't know why. I don't, but I know how it feels, and for me that's a truth. And I suppose without the people who do harm, there wouldn't be a story to then give a value of peace. As much as a cop-out as that is, because I know in the New Age community, they run with that pretty hard by saying, I chose all of this, right? And so on. But go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, I appreciate that, Orion. That was a great summary, and I would have to fully agree. It's spiritual bypassing if you don't acknowledge how it affects everything and everyone, and really not taking the time to intrinsically internalize that. When it comes to how the universe experiences itself, there is a level of that element of it there being a requirement of suffering in this space, but that does not give anyone the right to not try to improve their lives or others. I think that it should be the first and foremost thing that you seek as you go through that process of understanding how large the big picture is, but then how micro the picture is at the same time, because it all feeds into itself. It's all internally reflecting the internal and the external. And there's a wisdom in that, that I feel like if you hit that point and you're not able to go past it, you need to keep going. You need to keep moving in that internal journey. Because spiritually bypassing ends up, we get holy wars and stuff like that. Right. And that's not a great thing to be a part of or to be responsible for. And that's, I think, where a lot of religion creates these hard definitions of what we're wanting to answer for, right? And then we say, well, it's in God's name, or it's divine right for this to happen for the overall collective, and we're going to eject this tribal group that they've been on this land for thousands of years. You have all these historical examples of that. So is that divine right, or is that humans just taking that and running with it? I think it's more so that, but I think there's a little bits of pieces of everything. It's just important to keep balanced in our perspective, that no matter whatever path we're going down, it increases our empathy, increases our internal work in ourselves. It creates us to be a better person and individual for others and our family. And if it's not pointing you in that direction, you need to do some more work.
I agree.
Yeah. You boil it down to it. Oh.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That seems.
Well,
I just want to say that seems to be the general consensus, at least on the other side that I've seen. And maybe there's an infinite number of versions of what the other side can be. I kind of lean more towards that, thinking that it's that. It's we want to put it in a box, but really it's just this infinity that's just meant to be experienced in all of its facets. I'll leave with that, and I'll say that feels the most correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Orion. Again, if people want to find your channel or your website,
I'm on TikTok at Psychic Orion, and I'm on YouTube at Remote Viewing Mysteries. And there's a ton of really cool blind targets that I've worked on my YouTube channel that you can peruse if you'd like to. I've been trying to explore consciousness for years now. So on YouTube, there's more remote viewing stuff, and on my TikTok, there's more evidential mediumship and evidential psychism. So depends on what flavor you want. You can go either way.
Awesome. We'll have all those links down below on the description of the channel. We'll also have it up on the screen as well to point people towards your channel. And well, thank you so much again, Orion, for joining us on the channel. And I really hope that we're able to have you back in a later
thank you all.
date.
I appreciate it. It's awesome.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
And make sure to like, share, subscribe. Please go to Ryan's channel, follow him, as long as sharing this episode. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Cosmic Convergence. Thank you, everyone.
Bad monkey.